Hello everybody, my name's Tyler Adam, and I'm going to tell you a little bit today about the cognitive theories of motivation, self-efficacy, attribution theory, and expectancy value theory. And so we'll start giving you an overview of the self-efficacy theory. Self-efficacy is the belief that we have in ourselves and how we view our ability to succeed in a situation. To determine someone's self-efficacy, we have to ask, how much do I believe in myself? Will I succeed? Somebody who has high self-efficacy is somebody who believes in their abilities and their performance. They are more likely to succeed and oftentimes view difficult tasks as challenges that need to be mastered and not as something to avoid. Somebody who has low self-efficacy oftentimes believes that tasks are harder than they actually are. So if you think something's going to be difficult, you'll make it a little bit more hard on yourself, and that oftentimes leads to increased stress. Somebody who has low self-efficacy is more likely to give up easily and more likely to blame their ability level, which we will talk about more in attribution theory. So we know that self-efficacy is our belief in our abilities and how much we are likely to succeed. How does that affect us in the classroom? How can we as teachers improve our students' self-efficacy? The main way in every source that I found was to have students set their own independent learning goals. What do I want to learn? How do I want to get there? So on. Once you have your students set their own learning goals, allow them to self-monitor their own progress. It puts a little bit more responsibility on them and also allows them to see how the progress is going as they move on in the learning process. After their self-monitoring, you could provide them a means to reflect on their progress and eventually modify their goals as necessary. So you see, hey, I'm not really moving as fast as I'd like to. Maybe I need to go back and change some things to get to where I would like to be. You should always provide positive, specific feedback on independent learning goals or really on any task. And always use student-friendly language that your students will understand. Don't talk down to them. Using feedback, it promotes intrinsic motivation. Internal, the children motivate themselves. Modeling is a good way to improve self-efficacy in the classroom. You can either have modeling with peers in small group work, or you as yourself, as the teacher, could do it. And another one that was recommended was self-viewing. That would be recording the student themselves working and letting them watch it to see what they're. The second theory of motivation is the attribution theory. And the attribution theory deals with how we interpret events and how those interpretations affect our behavior. So basically saying, how do we modify or change our behavior based on our interpretation of events that we've been involved in. Attribution is broken up into internal and external. Internal attribution we normally base on personality, while external is based on the situation. We are more likely to explain others' behavior internally, but our own externally. And an example of that is somebody who doesn't like history. You say, because I don't like history, that's why I do bad on the test. Not because I don't study, but because I don't like history. Another example is if you're waiting in line and somebody cuts in front of you, you will judge their behavior internally. You'll say, well, that person's a jerk, he's a bad person. However, if you're cutting in line, you judge it externally. Well, I was in a hurry, it was something out of my control, I really needed to get in here right now. So how can we use attribution theory in the classroom? We need to first ask ourselves, are the students having trouble with the content that we're giving them or the motivation and desire to succeed? We also have to ask ourselves, do our students have a preconceived notion of failure? Has this student struggled in math every year to the point where he's just finally burned out and says, I'm going to fail, there's nothing we can do about it? First and foremost, we as teachers need to figure out, what do we attribute these issues to? Some of the ways to figure that out, one of the ways is to incorporate bell to class transition activities to gauge interest. One example of that would be like a current event, displaying a current event on the board and just having the students read it and answer questions on paper or just call on random students. The purpose of a bell to class transition activity would be to take the first few minutes of class to just look around the room and gauge what you see. How many kids have their heads down? How many are paying attention? How many look happy, look sad? Another way to do this that I found, which I think might be a little difficult in a middle school or high school classroom with your periods being shorter, would be to actually hand out a sheet where you'd have, how are you feeling today? Or smiley faces, circle how you feel. Again, that was recommended in a few sources, but I think that might be a little too time consuming to then collect all of that and look over it. But that's another way to use the attribution theory in the classroom. In order to fully understand the expectancy value theory, or just the expectancy theory, first have to talk about what is an expectancy and what is value. So an expectancy is what we expect will happen. Will we have success or will we have failure? And how much will we like something, enjoy it, have fun with it, or dislike it? Is strongly tied to self-efficacy and our beliefs in our abilities. Value is how much are we going to enjoy the perceived reward. Now, the perceived reward is not an actual level of satisfaction. It's not something we're actually going to get, but just how much do we value the reward, the expected satisfaction of a particular outcome. So the theory then of expectancy value says that the amount of motivation people have to do an activity or a job, anything, is determined by the desirability of the outcome. An example of that would be the student expects that the math final will be very hard. He wants to pass math, so he's going to pay more attention in class and study harder. For somebody else, they think the math final will be hard. They think they're just going to fail it anyway. Put my head down. I don't really need to study. So how can we use expectancy in our classrooms to increase student motivation? Well, first and foremost, the one strategy that I found in just about every source that I encountered was to use a reward system that's tied to performance. If we use a reward system tied to performance, our students are being reinforced and rewarded multiple times throughout the learning process instead of just one reward at the end. When working with rewards, we should try to allow students to select their own appropriate rewards. We can't promise Jose a bicycle for turning his homework in every night. We can't give Eric extra recess time because he gets a 10 out of 10 on his spelling test, but we can give snacks or prizes or something of that nature to reward our students for their performance. We should place an extra emphasis on noticing the effort that the students put forth, which leads to their improved performance. Sort of a catch them being good type situation where we want to let them know that we see the extra effort that they are putting forth and what a positive effect that's having on their performance in class. One of the more difficult ones is to tie subjects into places, people, and events, things that have real-world meaning and application to our students. And this can be difficult, especially in the sciences, math, history especially. I know it was very difficult trying to explain something that took place in the 1800s as being relevant to a student today. But even though it's a little bit more difficult, it's a great way to increase a student's motivation to try and tie something in to their interests. And we should also emphasize expected behaviors as positive. So how do these three theories all work together? Our self-efficacy influences our self-confidence and the belief that we have in our abilities. It tells us what we feel like we are capable of. Attribution theory influences our interpretation of events. Why did this work out? Why did this not work out? Why did I like this? Why did I not like this? When we combine our self-confidence and the results of our interpretations, we create our own personal expectations. Once we have our expectations, we can decide how much value we place on the result of any given situation. Our beliefs and attitudes, combined with our interpretation of past events, create our expectations, which help us decide what we value and what we do not. I should also mention that self-efficacy, attribution, expectancy theory, they don't just have to do with student motivation, they also have an effect on our motivation. A lot of times teachers use past experience to influence their expectations. I often hear, well, I have, Johnny's brother this year. What a pain he was. I bet his brother's going to be just as bad. I don't understand my students. I don't understand where they come from, what they're interested in. Not another dyslexic kid, not another autistic kid in my classroom, anything like that. We oftentimes allow those to shape our expectations and therefore lower our expectations for students that we're going to have in our classes. Teachers that don't have high self-efficacy may be hesitant to change their teaching style. If you don't have a high self-efficacy and you don't view things as a challenge to be overcome, you're not really going to be all that willing to try something new and challenge yourself. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's the students who will suffer from that. One important thing to take into account is that what we value a lot of the time is completely different from what our students value. I could care less about phones and shoes and driving privileges because I have them. It's not something that I care about, but something that I hear about all day, every day from every one of my students. So it's important to at least familiarize yourself with and understand what they're interested in and what a powerful impact that that can have on their motivation. Teachers with low self-efficacy, who may be hesitant to change their teaching styles, when questioned, often report unhappiness in the classroom with their job in general. This is not what I thought I was getting myself into. Not everybody's learning. And the sad reality is that unhappy teachers lead to classrooms that just aren't effective. And motivation is key. So, in closing, student motivation, as well as our own motivation, is a combination of these three theories and many other theories and other cognitive motivational theories. But our job is to find the right balance of all of them so that we can increase our students' beliefs in their abilities. When we increase their beliefs in their abilities, we will increase their intrinsic motivation, which will in turn help them to analyze and learn from their behaviors in a positive way. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? How did this behavior affect your score on this test? Or how did it affect your relationship with someone else? Always keeping the language positive and helping them move along and grow in their own motivation. And we also have to try to eventually alter our students' expectations. Attainable expectations. We don't want to have a student who is getting C's say, well, by the end of the year I'm going to have straight A's and 4.0, and we want realistically attainable expectations, which will eventually create new values, and then we can move on to shooting for a 4.0. But start small and help them achieve success, and that goes a long, long way in student motivation, which goes a long, long way in classroom management and creating a classroom environment where everyone, teacher, student, para, can succeed and hopefully thrive.